Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged. I am your host, Tammy West, and I promised you that today we are going to talk about this concept of, are you a warner or a welcomer? And also I promised you that there is something in between. So that's why we're here today. Thank you for joining. I'm always excited that you agree to spend some of your time with me. So the story is this. I live in a neighborhood that we moved, you might remember, from the big house and 5 acres in the woods. And we moved to a smaller house that's like house. Like I should probably, if I leaned out, I was going to say I could turn my computer if you're watching on YouTube and you could see, but it doesn't matter. If I opened my window and my neighbor opened their window and we leaned really far, we could touch for sure. We might fall, but we could touch. So it's very, very close. It's a very active neighborhood. If I were still in my 20s or 30s with young children, this will be a wonderful, I mean, it is a fine place to live. I'm not saying that, but I always kind of smile when I think about the time that these people spend together. They have birthday parties that they go to in the summer. They go to the pool together. I mean, it's just a very social, active community with a very active Facebook group. You know what I mean? Like the age of social media. So some good things, some bad things. Like last night, our power went out twice for an hour and a half each. We were having an ice storm here north of Nashville, and immediately the Facebook group, but it was, people were being fun. They were saying, hey, I hear somebody has a generator. Can we come over? Drinks are on me. I mean, I'm assuming some of these people with kids may have gotten together, put some lighting in there somehow, maybe played some games. I don't know, but I'm assuming that probably happened because it was only 6:30 the first time the power went out. My husband and I, on the other hand, at 8 o'clock, we were like, well, I'm going to bed. And then the power comes back on. You know how that works. But there are also, things that happen in a very close, spaced community. There are a lot of dogs in the community. I walk my dogs. I say my dogs. You've kept up with me. I have Charlie, my golden retriever. And then many, many times over the past few years, I have Sailor, my grand dog, who's actually Charlie's brother from a later litter. And so he just went back home with his mom last night. So he's gone for a while, but I walk them both. I bring the bags. I never, ever let them use the restroom without cleaning it up. In fact, there was one day where I forgot to bring a bag and I ran them home and I ran back and cleaned it up. I mean, I just think it's the responsible thing to do, but you can tell that not everybody does that because there's debris everywhere. I'm trying to use language that's not gross. So you will see some signs in the yards. Now, one of the signs, and I don't even know if this sign was intended to indicate anything about dogs. I think it was just more of a sign that the people liked for their friends. So I have the picture in the show notes, but it's a little poodly looking dog with a sign in his mouth that says, welcome. Then there's another person in the neighborhood who has a sign that says, keep dogs off grass, cameras in use. And there's one in the side yard and one in the front yard. Now, I posted it on social media, on Facebook, a week, I guess it was last week when I said we were doing this week. And I'd said, let me know your thoughts. And there were a few thoughts. Some people were saying, I'm always responsible with my dogs, blah, blah, blah. One person said, well, you know what? Maybe that person had just had it. They've tried everything else and they're like, look, stay off my yard, which makes me think of an old guy sitting on his porch, get off my yard. But maybe they've just had it. And so maybe that's the only thing they knew to do. What I'm relating it to today, what it really made me think about, I think about a lot of things on my walks, but it wasn't really about the dogs per se, or the signs in the yards. It was about us as people. And if we carried signs around, would the sign be, stay off my yard, cameras are in use? Or would the sign be, welcome? Or is there an in-between? Okay, both of those are for a reason. The people put them out there for a reason. The people put them out there with some intended, something that they want to happen. And so that's what I wanted to just chat with you for a minute about is, well, how are we portraying ourselves? And let me back up and say that for the person who put the stay off the grass, cameras in use, they put it in the yard as soon as they moved in. But maybe they had had an experience where they lived before. I don't know. But let's talk about the signs for a minute and then relate it to us. If I put a sign out in my yard that says stay off the yard, or relating to me, let's say that makes me a warner, like I'm warning you. What sort of behaviors might indicate that I want you to stay off? I am warning you. I don't want you to bring yourself into my world. It could be a lot of things. It could be your demeanor. It could be your facial expressions. It could be your crossed arms. It could be the language that you use with other people, or maybe you're not a good listener. Maybe you don't invite people in by listening. Maybe you are the constant talker who doesn't allow other people to talk. Maybe there's sarcasm, but there's something, even though you may not carry a sign that says, I don't want to engage with you, well, then there might be some things that are coming out of you that tell people, stay off my yard, right? And so looking at both of those, it could be history. Maybe you've been, and what this really is about today is self-awareness. That's what it's about. And I'm a big old choice person. Those people chose the signs that they put in their yards. They chose them. We choose our behaviors. We choose things that we do that will either present us as a warner or a welcomer or in between. It doesn't mean that we know we're choosing them. And that's the thing, is we got to get some self-awareness. So if a person puts a sign like that in their yard, especially when they first move in, they have to know on some level, well, what might the consequences of that be? Well, one consequence might be that the dogs don't come in their yard. That's good, right? That's what they want, is for the dogs to not come in their yard. So that's not a bad thing. Another consequence might be that you don't have neighbors coming over to introduce themselves, especially if they have pets. It might be that people are a little bit fearful of you. And if they see you outside, it might be awkward as to whether or not they approach you. Okay, so our choices for us, if we shield ourselves from people, if we exhibit behaviors that indicate you cannot come in, then the thing we have to remember is that there will be consequences. Some of those consequences might be positive. Maybe it protects you from being hurt again, but maybe it also keeps you from developing deeper relationships. Now let's go to the other side, the cute little puppy with the welcome sign hanging in his mouth. Again, I don't know that it had anything to do with dogs, but it's still a very welcoming sign. So if you put that sign in your yard, you're choosing to do that. What might some consequences be? Well, one might be that if your neighbors see it, they might be, and even if it's not intended for whether or not you bring your dog, it's a dog sign. And people who don't like dogs probably wouldn't use a dog sign. So a consequence might be that people, when you moved in, or if they just moved in, or if they don't know you, they might come over to say hello. They might not be afraid of you when you're outside, right? I mean, all the things that you want people to know, hey, welcome. We want you to be here. Unintended consequences or negative consequences might be that it opens you up to too much, right? Maybe people are like, well, they have pets and they don't care, so I'm not going to worry about it. Or it may be that people might not have quite as, maybe there's no fear of, treading on your property because they see you as being this way welcoming person. So again, consequences is there. And for us, being welcome. I mean, it sounds like there can be nothing better. Like, what would be negative about that? How does it look if you're very welcoming to people? Maybe it's that and I'm doing this on YouTube just to make a point, maybe it's that you talk with big open hand gestures, that you smile, that you listen and you nod when people are talking, that you show interest, that you engage people in interesting conversation, but you don't dominate. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And in fact, I will post a link in the show notes about communication styles that might help you a little bit. So I'll do that. So that's the great thing, right? If you show this welcoming personality, what might be a downside is that if people see you as always being just happy and welcoming and pleasant, it could happen that you could be taken advantage of, right? People might dump on you too much. You might be the fixer. You might be the person that everybody always go to and you don't take care of yourself. It might be that they treat you poorly and you won't speak up. Okay, and none of these are end all be all statements. I'm just saying it could be. So if we are a complete welcomer, I guess is what I mean, without boundaries, or we are complete warner without any welcoming. Both of those things are probably going to have some positives, but also some negatives. So is there a middle ground? There is a middle ground. And I wanted to go with the W theme. So I was like, I don't know, if I start with warner, welcomer, I'm like, well, what could be in the middle? So I just wrote this down. I was like, what did I say? And I called it the well-rounder. Maybe you can think of a better word. A well-rounder would be the person who has an element of the warner, meaning I have boundaries. I don't want your dog to use the restroom in my yard. I don't want you to trample on my yard. I don't want you to treat me poorly. I don't want you to disrespect me. And also elements of the welcomer. You know, I'm okay. Like if your pet comes here, I would like to meet you. I am fine if you come by. And so there's this middle ground. So that could be indicated by your behaviors of being the smile, the welcoming conversation, but also the boundaries. And the sign, now we've had this ice storm here for a few days and before it was raining. And honestly, I did not want to go back out in the neighborhood and take pictures of the signs. There are signs all over the neighborhood that say, please clean up after your pet, or be a good neighbor, clean up after your pet. So I found one that wasn't necessarily from our neighborhood. Well, it wasn't from our neighborhood, but it's the same sign. So I'll put all three signs in there. You know, to me, again, I'm not judging anybody who puts these sign up. I'm just thinking of the background reason and then the potential consequences. When it says, please clean up after your pet, it feels like a balance between the warner and the complete welcomer, the well-rounder that says, you know, I want to be in your world. I want you to be in my domain, but I am not going to let you take advantage of me. I'm not going to be a doormat. So that was the quick what I wanted to talk to you about today. So thank you. Oh, you know what? Let me say one more thing. You might have heard 3 words. You probably have. And this will be in the link to the communication article in the show notes, probably a couple of podcasts. I'll link in there too. But it's aggressive, passive, and assertive. So that's what I leave you with. Are you a warner? Are you a welcomer? Are you a well-rounder? So read more about it in the show notes. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. Please invite your friends to subscribe, download, comment on the show notes. Follow me on my public Facebook group, which the link is in the show notes. And also, if you're a woman and you haven't joined my private Facebook group, there's a link in the show notes for that too. Coming up, it's probably going to take a little longer because I'm one of those. I wrote a coffee style assessment years ago, and I'm what I call an espresso. I always think things can happen more quickly than they really can. So I'm redoing the Stress Club, revised edition, and I'm also recording a class based on that. So I'm hoping still March. I don't know, but I will keep you posted, and I will keep you posted a lot, especially in that private Facebook group, A Place for Women, because the book is geared toward women. So that's what I have for you today. And until I see your face next time, even though I don't really see your face until we're together again, consider yourself hugged.